Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. And today's mini dose, we're going to be jumping back into the topic of friendships. This is a topic that we like around here in the Evergreen RX pod because friendships, relationships in general, hugely important, huge part of our lives. So many different aspects and things to talk about with them. And so I'm super excited, even though today, some parts of it, it's hard. We're going to be talking about, coping with changing friendships, losing friendships, growing at different rates, what happens when we start to see friendships that used to feel one way or be one way in our life changing for so many different reasons, and that can bring a lot of tough feelings. So first off, I just want to say, I'm with you. I feel you. It's so hard. I've lost friendships through falling out, but I've also had friends grow apart and move, and we just change over time, and so it just doesn't look the same, and it's hard, no matter what way you slice it or what the cause is. It can be a tough part of life or bring some sadness or just confront us with the ever-flowing and ebbing changing of our lives and of our relationships and the fact that things aren't ever static. So I totally hear you on that, and I hope that this episode, if you're really needing it right now, does provide you some of that support and comfort that you're looking for. So yeah, I love if I can play any part in being that for you or just making you feel less alone, because this is something that everybody's dealing with. I did some research preparing for this episode, and oh my gosh, the amount of articles, podcasts, resources out there on friendships and on this specific phenomenon of them changing and morphing over time. It's just endless. We can't stop talking about this because it is so ubiquitous and universal. So if that does nothing but bring you a little bit of comfort that you're not alone, then I hope that it can at least give you that. So yeah, diving in, like I said, change can come from so many places. So let's just get on the same page off the bat. When we're talking about how to cope with changing friendships, this can look so many different ways. Like I said, you're growing apart. Maybe you get older and you develop different ideological perspectives, or you have different beliefs or values than you used to. You are busy. Life gets busy. It's kind of puts other relationships on the back burner. You no longer share the same passion or shared interests in things. They move, you move for work, for family, for marriage. If there's a falling out, you're in different stages of your life. Certain relationships are meant to be here during certain stages, whether that be high school friends or someone that you're friends with through work or through beginning motherhood or whatever it may be. Some people are meant to be here for certain stages and not forever. And so sometimes when we move out of that stage, then that friendship also kind of moves out of our life as well. So really my first kind of direction I go with this is to sit and spend some time reflecting on what change means to you in general. I would say it's safe to bet that most people do not love change. It's one of those things that is inevitable in life, but can be uncomfortable or hard, sad, and it's going to happen no matter what. So really reflecting on what does change mean to you? And in particular with whatever is kind of causing the change in your friendship, what do you think the fallout of that is, or the outcome? Say a friend is moving. So you might not be losing this friendship, but it's going to look different. There's different expectations or different ways that you might be keeping in touch, or things that you're not able to do together anymore. And is there some grief there, some processing on what the new friendship will look like? But I think it's valuable to understand that the scenario, the cause of the change can also influence what the outcome is. It's not all equal. It doesn't just mean that You have to throw your hands up and say, oh, great, well, I guess, I'm never going to get to talk to this person again, or it's never going to be the way that it was, and all of this was for naught, or whatever. Some of those catastrophizing thoughts that we can have can spawn out of this discomfort that we have with change, or maybe some of the beliefs that we have around what happens when relationships change. So really getting curious with that and starting to recognize how it shows up in your life. Also, is it the beginning of a change that really makes you uncomfortable? For me, that's the case. When I'm anticipating a change on the horizon, I get really sad and really reflective and nostalgic and scared of what's going to be on the other side of that. But usually once I come to the other side, I'm good. Girl has processed it. I am ready to go. Like, I'm totally in that next phase. But for other people, they feel ready to jump into something, ready to make a change. And once they're there, that's when the grief hits them, or maybe some of the nostalgia or some of the processing of what that means for their life hits them. Some people are holding on to something that hasn't been working for a long time through that fear of change. So kind of knowing how it particularly shows up for you can help you through maybe the moment that feels really hard. If you are someone that jumps right into change and then is kind of like, once it sets in, you're like, oh shit, now I'm feeling freaked out. Know that about yourself. Know that it's not always going to be that way. That maybe looking back on changes in the past that felt like that, and how you dealt with them and how you got through them. Because one of the things that goes along hand in hand with change is transition. Transition means you are in the phase where you're not where you were and you're not yet where you're going. You're adjusting, you're recalibrating, you are incorporating this change into your life. And transition is a distinct period of time. It doesn't last forever. So when you can recognize where you're at in the change process, sometimes that can add some ease into knowing, okay, this isn't forever. I'm learning how to live in this new space. So it's also important to know how you respond and how you can best support yourself. Are you someone that wants to run at the first sign of something changing in your relationships? Are you someone that wants to stick it out no matter what? Does that work for you, or are there other ways that you can support yourself? Maybe you have a childhood best friend who now just has a different set of beliefs than you do. And each time you see each other, you find it harder and harder to ignore that. And you're feeling the discomfort of being unaligned in that way for the first time. So if your natural inclination is to just run, to cut ties, to say, all right, this isn't working, sit with that for a little bit. See, is that actually what I want to do? Or is there something that can be communicated here? Which is a point that I'll get to in a minute on communicating with yourself, with your support system, and with potentially this friend throughout the whole process. Because I think it can help us circumvent a lot of hurt and miscommunication and loss that maybe was not guaranteed, but, is kind of how things went because we never talked about what was going on or what was changing or what maybe new ways of being or nurturing this relationship could have been. So knowing how you best respond and how you support yourself. And again, I'll throw some supports out at the end because I know sometimes that can be the hardest part of this, is that we can't change. We can't avoid relationships ever looking different or not working out or being, at the natural stage where it's time to let them go. We can't avoid that reality or discomfort, but there are ways that we can be with it and try to support ourselves as much as possible, while we're going through it, while we're faced with that. So when you start to be confronted with some change, whether circumstantial, like they're moving, or otherwise, it's a good time to step back and evaluate. Okay, what do you want this relationship to look like? In your ideal world, what would it look like? And how close is that ideal to reality? Maybe you have a friend that now has way different political beliefs than you do. And you wish in your ideal world that they aligned with you and they believe the same things you do. Well, how close is that to reality? Because we can't change what people believe. We can't change how they act and how they think. So, is that a fair thing to ask? Or is it possible to have that friendship not discuss topics that you don't agree on, or interact in ways where it doesn't become a super big sticking point? Does that feel realistic to you? Or does it feel like what you're really wanting from this relationship now is space, is distance, to not be so involved in each other's life, or to potentially end the friendship, which there is a time and place where that is the appropriate option. So getting really clear on what it is that you want. Are you just grieving the friendship because it's not like how it used to be? You're just growing apart and that's okay with you. You want to grow apart or you're comfortable with that, but you also just have feelings of grief over that reality, which sometimes is what happens. Is we can even want something or be okay with a change that's happening, but still have feelings of, oh, okay, I wish this wasn't how it is, or I miss how things used to be, and sometimes that, can make me feel sad. And you can also talk to other people in your life who you trust and you rely on. Get help on sourcing information on what might be the next best move, or, having somebody that's there to listen and to care and to hold your hand through it, to remind you that one friendship or relationship is not the only one that you have other sources of support that you can lean on, to be able to use that in times when other relationships are dissolving. You can evaluate, how do I want to commemorate or honor what this relationship has been in my life? Maybe you and a friend would like to go do something that you love to do one last time, or reflect back on special moments. We do this a lot of times with relationships and in dating. People take the loss of a relationship, the ending of a relationship, a lot more seriously sometimes than friendships, because that's just what we're taught. You actually have a breakup conversation, or you decide to transition the relationship out, and you can do it in a really intentional way. And we don't always really do that with friendships. And I think that's a big miss. If possible, and through communication, you and a friend can mutually talk about what is going on and decide what you want to do about it. I think that can lead to a lot more closure and kind of closing the loop on these relationships, the way that, we ideally strive to do with romance that doesn't work out. And even if it doesn't end in a beautiful package or way, we have breakup conversations for a reason. People don't usually just ghost someone that they've dated for years, because that would just be so confusing. But we don't do the same with friendships. We just sometimes let them disappear. And that can lead to more confusion or complex feelings when we are trying to cope with the changes. And I'm not saying this can always happen. We don't live in a perfect world. It's not always possible to do that. And I'm so sorry for you if that is the case, if it wasn't possible for you to have those kinds of conversations or get some of that closure for yourself. But there are situations where it is possible, and I throw that out as an option because I think it can be really helpful. So as I've been saying throughout this whole thing, there's the component of communicating. Once you've kind of reflected and evaluated what's happening in your relationship, what you like things to look like, or maybe even just acknowledging some of the changes that are already present, if it feels comfortable and possible for you, communicate them with your friend. Say what you're noticing and how it's making you feel. Share how important they are to you if that's something that you feel called to do. Open up the conversation. You don't have to just experience this in silence. And there can be empowerment in calling things as they are, pointing to what's happening and calling it out by name. So one example of this, in the case of someone moving, which I keep using this example because, man, in your 20s, this happens a lot. And it's tough. And this mini dose idea actually spawned out of my brother, who has multiple really close friends all moving across the country, in rapid succession. And it's like, how do I deal with this? Well, set expectations, talk about, how you could create ways to stay in touch or to nurture the friendship or maintain it. I don't really love phone calls, but I am a big texter. That's a good thing to let a friend know. Or else they might feel like, you're not wanting to keep up, or there can just be misconceptions. And we want to try to avoid those. And also acknowledging like, okay, so maybe my friend is moving to California and I still want to keep up with them, but I also see that there's a need to have a close friendship like that in person. It's really valuable for me to be able to be in the same city as someone. So maybe I'm going to work on developing a closer relationship with friends that I already have, or making new friends in this city, to help with some of the loss and pain that comes with people that you maybe don't want to move and you still have a wonderful connection with who are. And so finding ways to ease that change for yourself, and know that there's more people out there, and we have so many people come into our lives for a period of time that they're meant to, and it sucks that not all of those are meant to be forever, but we also are gifted with different and beautiful relationships throughout our lives for the period of time that they're meant to be. And the more that we can be compassionate with ourselves and work with ourselves on letting things come in and letting things go out as they are naturally meant to, the more we can open ourselves to beautiful experiences and more relationships that imprint on us and mean a lot to us and teach us a lot about ourselves and hold special places in our heart. So in addition to all of this, I just want to throw out some resources for you guys because why not? So I do have 2 other episodes on friendship if you want to kind of do a deeper dive. If you're particularly experiencing a friendship breakup, I've got a whole Minidose episode for you on that. It's number 6, navigating friend breakups. So that's got a lot of good stuff. And I also have an episode 12, on cultivating new friendships. If you're noticing all these transitions and changes in the relationships that you've had in your life for a while now, and you're wanting to call in new friends and create new bonds, then that's a good place for some info and hopefully helpful tips on how to do that. And also in my research for this episode, I ran across this selection of articles. I guess it's like a whole column on the Atlantic that's called The Friendship Files. Ton of great resources there and articles on a bunch of different topics on friendship. So maybe you can find one pertaining to specifically what you're dealing with. I think you have to have a subscription, but maybe you get like 1 or 2 free articles. So that was something I just want to put out, and I'll have linked below. And also, searching up on Spotify, just some music for yourself. I use music a lot to support me in what I'm going through. I'm a big lyrics girl. So if a song really hits on something I feel like I'm going through in my life, that has been very beneficial for me, especially throughout friendship changes and losses. I have specific songs that really remind me of that relationship, and I listen to and I kind of get into my feels about it, and I let myself process and grieve, and music can be a really helpful way in which we can do that. So I was going to link below one playlist I found, but actually in searching, changing friendships on Spotify, I found that there was so many different playlists that pertain to kind of different situations, whether it be, a breakup of a friendship, or somebody moving, or just feeling nostalgic for all of the people that have come into your life and touched you in some way. There's so many different ones. So search that if you're wanting a little bit music therapy for yourself, and use that, as an extra support. So that's all I've got for you guys in this mini dose. I hope this brought you some comfort and support, and I really appreciate you listening. Let me know how this resonated for you, and if you're needing extra support, reach out to me too. I'm here for you. So, I so appreciate you being here for me and listening and sharing this podcast with whoever you feel may benefit, and following along and rating if you'd like, leaving me a 5-star rating. It takes 2 seconds, and it is so helpful for me. So thank you for doing that. And this is, in fact, the last episode of my season 2. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break and coming back at you with more amazing guests in the wellness space, answering more of your questions, talking about friendship, dating, spirituality, wellness, living intentionally, living in line with your purpose, creating more fulfillment and contentment in your life. There is so much more of that coming for you very shortly, so follow along so you do not miss anything. Until I catch you guys next, I wish you all of the best. I hope you're well. Keep up with me, TikTok, Instagram. I will be there. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I will catch you guys very soon. Bye.